two groups of people. So let me address you both up front. If you have been circling Tesla's Cybercab event on September 3 and wondering whether it is worth staying up for, this episode runs the full account behind the event for you. And if you keep hearing that Robotaxi will upend transportation, while the news swings between 100 billion funding rounds and crash investigations, and you cannot tell revolution from bubble, this episode gives you the tools to judge for yourself. On August 22, 2026, Tesla made it official. The Cybercab event lands September 3 in Austin, Texas. Under the title Exclusive Access, the car has no steering wheel and no pedals, just two seats. Every line of the design serving a ride network. Production started in April at the Texas Gigafactory, and certification filings with the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency have turned over most of the hand. A 48 kilowatt-hour battery, front-wheel drive, an equivalent range of 673 kilometers. Mass target runs to millions of units a year, with per-car cost aimed below $30. The same month, other numbers were circulating. Waymo's fleet grew from 1,500 cars last April to 2,500 by November, and weekly rides hit roughly 500 this March. Baidu's Apollo Go ran 3.2 million rides in the first quarter, peaked at 350 rides in a single week in March, has passed 22 million cumulative rides, and covers 27 cities, and Tesla's own unsupervised fleet in Austin, by the count of a third-party tracking platform, stands at 153 vehicles. Spotlight on one side, three companies posting numbers on completely different scales on the other. This episode holds the water level where this channel stands. No team colors, no dunking. Every number comes from public reporting or company disclosures. I will name sources as I quote them. And where the facts are disputed, you will hear the dispute itself. Start with the Cybercab itself. Its body format is a minority position in the industry. Purpose-built robotaxis fit on one hand. The RT Waymo built with Zeekr. The origin from GM's Cruise that got cancelled, and now Tesla. Everything else is a converted production car. LiDAR on the roof. Compute boxes in the trunk. Native design means nobody planned around a human driver, so cost and cabin space get reallocated from the first sketch. The EPA filings showed the spec, a 48 kilowatt-hour pack, front-wheel drive. That looks small next to consumer electric cars starting at 75 or 80 kilowatt-hours, but this car was built for fleet duty, and a working vehicle optimizes energy cost per kilometer. Media estimates put efficiency around 4 miles per kilowatt-hour, nearly 300 kilometers of real-world driving, with the 673-kilometer equivalent figure from a more lenient test cycle run all day. Charge twice, and the electricity bill lands far below the fuel bill. Cutting the wheel and the pedal saves more than parts. With no driver, the cabin goes symmetrical, two seats facing or side by side. And boarding flow and accessibility get easier to engineer. Hence the purpose-built camp's argument. Converted robot axes are transitional. The native design is the end game. Production uses a new process Tesla calls Unbox, already trialed in part on the Model Y, aimed at pressing down line investment and labor hours per car. Musk said on an earnings call the ramp target is millions of units a year. Take a haircut. Tesla has never hit a ramp on schedule. The Model 3 hell and the Cybertruck's long labor on the record. Still, this car was designed for mass manufacturing from day one, and the sub-$30 cost target was baked in as a premise. That premise lands on the battery as exactly those 48 kilowatt-hours. For a private car, range is peace of mind. For a fleet car, the battery is an asset under the floor, depreciating daily, so sizing it to just barely enough pushes price weight and the energy cost per kilometer down together. Charging time is part of the shift schedule. Plug in during fog. Stay online at peak. A private car competes on range per charge. A fleet car on revenue turns per day. 2 seats is arithmetic too. Most taxi trips carry 1 or 2 people. Bigger parties bodies get a larger car from the network. And across production scale, a smaller body is a double saving in materials and road space. One line to summarize this machine. It is not a better electric car. It is a machine designed around minimum cost per kilometer. Keep it close. It comes back every time we run the numbers. 3 positions worth watching at the event. First, pricing and cities. Tesla's stated target is paid ride service in Austin within 2026. So September 3 most likely brings a first city list and an expansion timetable. Austin has run so far on a converted Model Y fleet, and the Cybercab is the first purpose-built car in the game. The number that matters is initial deployment. A few dozen cars is demonstration scale. A few hundred is operating scale. The first is a show. The second is a business. Second, the business model. Tesla runs a dual track in the US, its own fleet in Austin plus licensing to operators elsewhere. If the event puts a licensing partner's name on screen, that matters more than the car. Owning fleets is heavy. Licensing is light but hard on quality control. And Uber and Lyft have both walked this road. Third, timeline credibility. Tesla's timing promises always need a discount. Production starting in April is settled fact. The ramp has no hard number. If Musk announces a specific monthly production figure and city count on September 3, write it down and check back in a year. That is the cleanest yardstick for this company's execution. A side note on format. From August 17 to 23, Tesla ran a lottery in Austin, open to riders who had taken a Robotaxi for tickets to the event. Inviting the first users in is a signal in itself. The Cybercab story plays to the capital markets while also playing to passengers, and in the second half of this business, passenger trust is scarcer than investor confidence. One more viewing skill. Watch for what goes unsaid. Price, production, and the city list will get covered. If you hear nothing about how paid rides are priced and nothing about how liability splits after a crash, the service side is not ready. A car can be rehearsed. Real pricing cannot, and dodging it usually means nobody has decided. And keep a sheet of paper beside you. Copy every number and date as it is spoken, and pull the note out in a year. The media will not do this for you. Trending topics amplify the loudest promise and never verify. The habit travels to any timeline happy company, and it may be the one moment an ordinary viewer and an institutional investor get graded on the same material. To read this three-way fight, first read the fork underneath it. The split runs deeper than technical detail. These companies disagree about how the world works. Waymo's route is armed to the teeth. LiDAR on the roof, radar ringing the body, high-definition maps laid down before the cars arrive. Sensing is redundant. Every new city gets mapped first, and the upside is a physical floor under safety. The price is literally price. Per car conversion costs long in the $100,000 plus range, and every city means fresh collection and fresh validation. Tesla's route is pure vision plus massive data. 8 cameras, no LiDAR, no HD map, and hundreds of thousands of production cars hauling rare scenarios home to train the model. Musk reasoning. A human drives with 2 eyes. So 8 cameras plus enough training should manage the upside is cost and fleet-wide software updates. The price is a long validation tail and a liability chain that ends at Tesla's own door. The third route, Apollo goes, is the Chinese answer. Coordinated vehicle, road, and cloud. The cars carry LiDAR short of Waymo stack, and the real weight sits in roadside sensors, cloud dispatch, and government-led demonstration zones. Sharing the burden onto infrastructure is how Apollo Go handles traffic like Wuhan's at controllable per-car cost. The strength is infrastructure and access efficiency. The weakness is that the infrastructure cannot be shipped overseas. One more difference, where each route parks its risk. Waymo spends upfront, buying certainty with expensive hardware, so its risk lives in cost. If cost never falls, it stays niche. Tesla pushes risk onto time, betting the long tail drowns in data, provided no major crash lands during validation. Baidu's risk lives in coordination, since the system only turns with sustained government cooperation, making the government relationship effectively part of its technology stack. Where the money goes, a weakness stays. Picking a route is like like buying insurance. No plan here is both cheap and fully covering. This layer helps even if you only scroll the news. The same minor accident reads as an execution bug on a sensor-heavy car and as an attack on the root foundations on a vision-only car. Half the shouting online is two worldviews yelling past each other, and the route map lets you scroll past it. Behind the routes sit three bets. Waymo bet safety redundancy can be bought. Tesla bet data scale substitutes for sensors. Baidu bets a system problem needs a system answer. Too early for verdict, but the 2026 operating numbers have started grading, and those ledgers are the next three chapters. Waymo has the most solid operating numbers in the world. Fleet size. Bloomberg reported growth from 1,500 cars in April 2025 to 2,500 by November, about 10 in the San Francisco Bay Area and 700 in Los Angeles, with a plan to reach at least 3,500 in 2026. Weekly rides, roughly 500 this March, about 50 times the same period 3 years ago. Further back, 4 million fully driverless paid rides across 2024. On money, February 2026 brought a $16 billion round at a $126 billion post-money valuation. The priciest standalone bet in autonomous driving, approaching a third of a traditional auto giant's market value on a fleet of a few thousand cars. What the capital markets are buying is the slope of the cost per kilometer curve and the room to substitute for ride-hailing with today's fleet almost beside the point. For a price anchor, media cited a San Francisco Waymo trip at $13.93, broadly in line with a ride-hailing car on the same route. Waymo's pricing, as far as anyone can tell, shadows ride-hailing rather than undercutting it with LiDAR and operation staff in the loop. It has no room for a price war. 2. Real worries. Expansion speed. 1. 0 added cars a year puts major U.S. city coverage around 2030, and the cash burn allows no such patience. And the RT built with Zeekr, the next generation car, that is the key to getting per car cost down. If the RT slips, talk of scale economies is just talk. The ledger hides a metric worth more than total ride utilization. Weekly rides divided by fleet size plus hours covered tells how much of a day each car spends earning rides can grow by stacking cars. Utilization only grows when the business gets healthier. Waymo's disclosure is continuous, and that transparency underwrites both the safety record and the valuation. The day Waymo stops publishing it or quietly swaps the methodology, that itself is a headline. The pricing end reads deeper. Matching ride-hailing prices runs a clean experiment. Will passengers pay the same money for a car with no driver? Apollo go round. The mirror experiment holding riders after subsidies fade. One test whether you can win without being cheap. The other, whether you survive no longer being cheap. Whichever answers first, that road gains confidence. Apollo Go's numbers need taking apart. Half a global number one, half a very Chinese subsidy story. Orders in Baidu's official figures. Weekly rides above 250 of fully driverless, 3.2 million fully driverless rides this year's first quarter. A single week peak above 350 in March. Cumulative orders past 22 million by April. Total autonomous driving distance past 240 million kilometers, 27 cities covered. Robin Li has said publicly that the cumulative count has passed the Waymos and ranked first in the world. Per car cost pivots on the 6th generation RT6, which pushes unit cost down to the 250 RMB class. A steep drop from the previous generation and the nerve behind the scale up. The plan is roughly 20 vehicles across 65 cities by 2026. Discounts the plan as usual. The direction, volume for price with scale is clear. The controversy is price. Early Apollo Go in Wuhan charged 5 yuan for 5 kilometers, a floor price aimed at pulling users from ride-hailing and building the habit. Commentators call it subsidy for scale. The question is, what happens when subsidies recede and prices climb back to ride-hailing levels or above? Do the users stay? Transportation is brutally price sensitive, and Robotaxis hold no exemption, a fact that gets skipped. A fair share of the 27 cities are overseas test or demonstration operations, including the Middle East and Southeast Asia. What leaves China along this route is the whole vehicle road cloud package. The geopolitical risk runs higher than selling cars, and so does the contract size. Selling vehicles is a one-time transaction. Selling the system is a long marriage. Roadside hardware needs maintenance. Cloud dispatch needs upgrade. Revenue arrives slowly, and once installed, it is hard to rip out. For the buying city, choosing a vendor means choosing a standard, so signed intentions do not count yet. The route only counts as proven when one overseas city runs the system as daily life for real commuters. The valuation logic looks like railway construction, priced on years of binding and the service revenue on top. Back to the cars. Volume for price carries a hidden premise. This generation of hardware has to be good enough. A fleet of 20 is depreciating while the software iterates, and the next generation may buy stronger capability at lower cost. Win the bet on early scale and it becomes a wall. Lose, and the bigger the fleet, the heavier the pile of outdated assets. Tesla's Robotaxi ledger is the thinnest of the three and the one needing the most water squeezed out. Fleet size, a third-party Robotaxi safety tracking platform, puts the fully unsupervised Austin fleet at roughly 153 vehicles in August 2026. A separate figure, near 573 Robotaxis total in the US, includes supervised cars with safety drivers aboard, and some analyses read the curves as diverging, with Tesla's active fleet shrinking this year rather than growing. The safety record is a Rashomon story. The bull version from Tesla's own earnings materials, more than 380 zero miles of unsupervised operation with zero at-fault incidents, a record held since February. The skeptic version from the July 2025 Austin launch through March 2026. Among automated driving crash reports filed with NHTSA, Tesla shows 18 and Waymo about 697. On the surface, Tesla looks miles ahead, but the exposure bases are not comparable. Waymo runs 2,500 cars around the clock across whole service areas. Tesla ran 100-odd cars in a limited zone, with safety drivers aboard early on. Flaunting a small fleet's low incident count is a base rate trap. One more fact that gets buried. Unsupervised operation only opened in January 2026, and a half year before ran with safety drivers. Tesla's true driverless experience counted to the day of the event is about 8 months. Every mile in there counts, but stacked against a Waymo with 6 years and more than 2 billion kilometers, it is too early to deliver a safety verdict. Tesla's real cars are not the Austin fleet. One car is Cybercab production capacity. The other is the few million cars already on world roads carrying the same hardware. The first sets the opening lineup. The second sets the ceiling. On September 3, both hit the table together. Beyond the cars sits a hurdle. Tesla has never run a transportation service. Who cleans the car? And who handles it when a passenger gets sick inside? The playbook does not need inventing. The hard part is copying it into muscle memory. Austin's 100-odd cars can survive on engineers babysitting them at scale. Every chore becomes a process, a schedule, and a scorecard. Time reads from both sides. Software progress compresses. 8 months of dense iteration may carry the weight of years. Safety reputation does not compress. It stacks kilometer by kilometer. The fast clock decides how quickly Tesla catches up. The slow one, how early the outside world believes. The spotlight falls on the fast clock while regulators watch the slow one. The hardest stretch is when the two are furthest apart. The faster the car improves, the heavier the suspicion outside. You trade a record for trust bit by bit. Below the big three, the second-tier fight is just as brutal. Its keywords going public and going overseas. Pony AI and WeRide both grew out of the Guangzhou autonomous driving startup wave and listed on Nasdaq around the end of 2024, back-to-back. Routinely bundled as the face of Chinese autonomy going global. Pony.A runs demonstration operations across southern and northern China. with fleets in Guangzhou, Beijing, and Shenzhen, and the Middle East is the second battlefield. Both are betting on. Dubai and Abu Dhabi have opened testing and commercial access to Chinese driverless firms. WeRide plays it lighter as a technology partner, allying with automakers and platforms. And its Uber venture in Abu Dhabi was the first Chinese autonomous driving asset inside a global giant network. The survival logic is finding a niche in the crack between giants. Head-on fleet competition against the big three is hopeless. Technology licensing and joint operations are the asset-light way to stay alive. Pony.ai supplies driving kits to automakers. WeRide spreads R&D across a product matrix of sweepers, minibuses, and robotaxis. But the window is narrowing. Industry analysts broadly expect 2026 and 2027 to be the second tier's life or death window once native cars like the Cybercab and the Zeekr RT Hammer cost down, the leader's fleet expand exponentially, and the chips left to technology providers devalue fast. Both stocks have swung hard since listing. What are the market prices? There is an option: acquisition or surviving until the licensing market opens. Dai is the strangest identity in this tier. It holds China's ride-hailing demand gateway. Its own autonomous driving unit has tested in Shanghai for years, and the pace slowed after its blocked IPO. For Didi, the Robotaxi is both a moat and a death warrant. Keep it, and your supply gets replaced by somebody else's driverless cars. Pour capital into it, and you fight your own core business for resources. A platform company wrestling with heavy assets R&D is one of the more interesting lenses on this industry. Set the companies aside. For one Robotaxi to make money, how does the account lay out? Cost side 4 blocks. The car Waymo's conversion sit above $100,000. The Zeekr RT's native target is set to cut that to less than half. The Cybercab aims below $30. The RT6 sits at 250 RMB. That order of magnitude spread is why purpose-built design is the line between life and death. Operating labor. Unsupervised does not mean unattended. Remote assistants watch screens ready to take over, and a skilled operator currently handles a few cars to a dozen or more. Every doubling of that ratio knocks a notch off cost per kilometer. Insurance and maintenance, crash rates, tires, cleaning, charging dispatch, small daily bills, depreciation. Fleet cars depreciate by mileage, and a car running 100 kilometers a year is due for replacement in about 3. Revenue side 2 blocks. The fare box pricing per kilometer or per trip times utilization. Ride-hailing cars average a few paid hours a day. Robotaxi can theoretically run around the clock, but real utilization is capped by demand density and data. The hidden ledger unique to the Tesla path. Driving data hauled home feeds the model's value that shows up in the next generation's cost curve. Strip the formula over the 3. Waymo is high cost, high certainty, expensive car, but utilization and a safety record that hold pricing up. Apollo Go is low cost, high subsidy, cheap cars bleeding in a price war. Tesla is cost undetermined. If $30 materializes, add the energy advantage and the data flywheel, and the unit economics get rewritten. If it does not, the 100-odd cars in Austin cannot carry the story. The industry has a name for the Q zone, the scaling death valley between 100 cars and 10 batch discount dispatch system, and repair networks all get rebuilt. Costs rise before they fall, and most players die inside it. What breaks first between hundreds and thousands is the organization at 100-car scale. An engineer fixes weird problems by hand. At 1,000-car scale, you need parts warehousing, repair scheduling, regional managers, and that overhead arrives ahead of the volume discount. Plenty of companies know how to fix cars. Very few know how to build systems, and the valley floor is littered with the second kind. Passing the technology test gets you a ticket. Passing the organization test gets you out a homespun test. When a company's hiring shifts from engineers toward operations and maintenance, it has entered the valley for real. Utilization hides one more trick. Sell the idle hours at midnight. The car sits depreciating negotiating so that time can go cheap to price-sensitive demand. Late-night puzzles, off-peak shuttles with the dispatch system pricing every hour of capacity. Whoever fills the off-peak hours spreads depreciation thinnest, and what comes down is cost while the margin stays in-house. The second half of this war gets fought on silicon. Tesla prepared its in-house A5 chip for the Cybercab with compute roughly a dozen plus times the previous HW4 generation and per mass dual redundant A5s as standard. Owning the chip locks inference cost onto your own curve out from under NVIDIA's pricing power and weld software to hardware in a way nobody else can copy. NVIDIA's other card is the ecosystem. At GTC 2026, it announced the Drive Hyperion platform had landed multiple global automakers with BYD, Geely, and Nissan on the list. And what those car makers are after runs past a handful of chips into a complete reference design spanning perception, planning, and the cabin. The Android versus iOS story is playing again in cars. Tesla, the vertically integrated iOS, NVIDIA, the Android licensing itself everywhere. The Chinese variable easy to miss. Power semiconductor industry analysts argue that AI infrastructure has rebuilt demand and electrification plus intelligence has pushed the car semiconductor content up nearly double. BYD and Geely both use NVIDIA's platform and pour money into their own chips. The two-legged logic. Borrow strength from the ecosystem. Keep the lifeline in your own hands. The in-house move has risks. Money from design through mass production is spent upfront. Sell volume and it spreads thin. Miss and it sits as dead weight. The i5 and the Cybercab ramp are two faces of one bet. Scale makes the chip a moat. A stall turns it into a hand on your own throat. A buyer can switch suppliers after losing, an in-house builder just loses. A filter for the news. Sort by layer before declaring winners. Chips, vehicles, and operations get conflated constantly. But only same layer players are opponents. Across layers, it is mostly symbiosis. An automaker adopting NVIDIA's platform has not lost to anybody. It may never have been competing in that layer. Most headlines ahead will be partnerships and licensing with real collisions only between a few same layer pairs. A closing judgment. Robotaxi is a systems industry running from chips through vehicles, through network, through the data loop, and the car is only one layer of it, which is why of these three players, one is a car maker, one a tech company, one a search company by origin, and not one is a traditional taxi company. Disruption has never once come from inside the industry being disrupted. While the big three fight over cars and operations, the right platforms bet in another dimension. Uber's strategy compresses to one line. Build no cars, touch no heavy assets. Be the aggregation gateway for driverless capacity. It partnered with Waymo in Phoenix and Austin, putting Waymo cars inside the Uber app, worked with WeRide in the Middle East, and signed letters of intent with multiple Chinese autonomous driving companies. Uber's CEO Dara has said publicly more than once that autonomy for Uber works as a supply upgrade. Human drivers will stay in shortage, driverless capacity filling the gap. Half true, half false. The true half drivers really are getting scarcer. US recruitment keeps getting harder, and driverless capacity is currently additive. The false half, once driverless capacity becomes the mainstream, the bargaining power between whoever owns the demand gateway and whoever owns the fleet gets renegotiated from scratch. All those exclusivity deals Uber signs amount to digging the gateway moat deeper before the fleet giants finish growing. Lyft is in a tighter spot at a fraction of Uber's scale, and its Waymo partnership in Nashville is read widely as survival by hugging a sigh. China's platforms show two other answers. A map aggregates capacity from Apollo, Go, and others through its map and hail layer, while Didi builds its own. One practical indicator falls out of this. Open your ride app and watch for the driverless option. The day it appears says more than any launch event. That is, your city jumping from demonstration to real commerce, away from the technology. The other half of the board is regulation. The U.S. legislates state by state. California granted Waymo its fully driverless commercial permit, and Texas runs looser. One reason Tesla based itself in Austin, since Texas is friendliest to autonomous driving access among the major states. NHTSA plays the after-the-fact role, and its two-day reporting rule for automated driving system crashes puts every player's moves on the public record. The system leaves wide room for innovation, but one vicious crash can trigger a national pullback. Cruise is the cautionary tale. After the pedestrian dragging incident in San Francisco, California revoked its permits and GM shut the operation down. China runs city-level access. Beijing, Wuhan, Chongqing, and others designate demonstration zones, and a permit won in one city means nothing in the next. Every city means a fresh application. The tempo stays controlled and any blast radius gets locked inside the zone, but going national stays low. Apollo Go's 27 cities were negotiated one by one. No single license unlocks the country. In 2026, the two philosophies converge. The US is tightening with Entrus's investigations of Tesla mounting. China is loosening with several cities expanding fully driverless commercial pilots into normalized operations. This race was never purely technological. It is also institutional, and whichever system keeps its safety record intact without strangling scale is the one whose industry breaks out. For the ordinary viewer, the touch point is blunt. When you can hail a driverless car in your city comes down to your local access list. The technology is rarely the holdup. Why does regulation always run half a beat slow? Approved too fast, something goes wrong, and responsibility lands on a named official. Signature on file. Approved too slowly, and the companies and riders who lost time have no faces. Whoever sits in that chair picks the stable option, which is why companies pour energy into city relationships. Only a long safety record moves the needle. The steadier a company runs, the braver the pen. The licensing era has an unwritten rule too. What a company does after an incident tests it harder than the incident report. Immediately lay out the details, and the regulator sees control. Cover up or stall even once, and none of your data can be trusted again. That logic pushed the industry into its current shape. Small incidents reported voluntarily. Bad news up front for passengers, a comfort. Concealment now costs more than any company dares pay. No conversation about robotaxis in China skips one city. Half of Apollo Go's scale story belongs to Baidu, the other half to Wuhan. Why Wuhan, not Beijing or Shanghai? First, road conditions. Two rivers split the city into 3 towns stitched by bridges and tunnels. Pedestrians and e-bikes woven through a system validated there arrives in most cities with room to spare. Second, access coverage. Policy opened for intelligent connected vehicles with fully driverless commercial operation allowed to expand the zone starting in 2024. And Apollo Go's local fleet raced to the world's largest single city operation. Third, industrial trade. Wuhan wants the autonomy calling card to pull its auto industry through a transition, and the Dongfeng system's traditional capacity needs a new story. The street level changes are the flesh and blood part. In the morning rush, quiet white and green Apollo Go cars sit in traffic like everybody else, and posting Robotaxi check-ins was briefly the traffic code of the season on local social media. The complaints are real too. At rush hour, the cars are overly law-abiding, hesitate at lane changes, and get honked at. That friction is proof they have become genuine participants in city traffic, no longer exhibits on a show stand. The second value of the sample is the template it sets. Policy pushes in Chongqing, Shenzhen, and Guangzhou have all cited Wuhan's operating data as a reference. A city in central China became the industry's stress test facility, a specimen of Chinese-style innovation. Run one city all the way through, then copy it sideways. Safety gets a chapter of its own. The mother question underneath every robotaxi controversy. First, the denominator trap. Compare safety properly, and the denominator is mileage. Crashes per million miles. Waymo 697 against Tesla plus 18 would wear a different face on a mileage basis. Waymo has published its safety methodology, benchmarked against human driving with injury crash rates significantly lower than human drivers in the same area, the most solid safety report in the industry. Tesla has published nothing comparable. The zero at fault mileage figure from its earnings call is a marketing caliber and would not survive a statistical audit. Second, the definition trap. What counts as one crash, an injury, a collision, a scrape against a curb? Reporting standards differ. NHTSA's rules set a common floor, but judgment room remains at the margins of small incidents. Stack media amplification on top. One minor driverless crash drawing 100 times the coverage of a human crash, and perception splits from statistics. Third, the actual risk structure. The dominant patterns under current public data are low-speed rear-ending. The classic scene being a human driver running into a robotaxi that brakes properly. Fault mostly sits with the human side, but the pattern exposes a real problem. A machine obeying every rule dropped into a river of human traffic is itself a new source of risk. The tacit understandings between human drivers, the little right-of-way negotiations, the headlight signals, the machine opts out of all of it. This break-in period never appears in marketing material. Then the account of trust. One vicious crash takes more from this industry than any single customer. It freezes an entire regulatory cycle, as Cruise demonstrated. It is why Waymo would rather move slowly than drop its LiDAR redundancy, and why Apollo go pull the safety drivers out more slowly at home than overseas. Safety is the license that decides whether this business exists above every cost line. On the passenger side, it gets concrete. The car drives strictly by the book, and you sit inside feeling steady while the driver behind swings around it. The route and speed sit plainly on the screen. After a few rides, the body relaxes before the mind does, and you catch yourself on your phone. Trust gets brewed one safe arrival at a time. One more bias deserves naming. The public holds machines to a higher standard than people. Human drivers crash daily, and everyone is used to it. A machine makes one mistake, and it trends nationwide within the hour. That asymmetry will keep forcing every company to beat humans by a wide margin just to earn a seat at the table from the passenger's chair. Fair enough. Keep that scale when you read the news. Machine errors get magnified, human errors get waved through, and the two ledgers are never kept on the same basis. On the technology side, the industry has been living a paradigm shift from rule-driven systems to end-to-end neural networks. The old paradigm split the system into perception, prediction, planning, and control. With every module's rules handwritten by engineers, reality's long tail cannot be finished, and somewhere past tens of thousands of rules, the rules start fighting each other. End-to-end tears out the handwritten middle, camera and radar signals in steering and breaking out behavior learned from oceans of human driving data. Tesla pushed this road furthest. FSD completed its end-to-end conversion over the past few years and trains on data streamed back from the global fleet. Baidu released a foundation model supporting L4 in 2024. Apollo Ghost operating data feeds straight into it, and the official term for the loop is the data flywheel. Waymo stays most conservative, keeping a substantial share of modular design as a safety backstop, while large models sharpen scene understanding. Foundation models also cracked a formerly unsolvable problem: common sense reasoning in rare situations. Swerve around the plastic bag, move away from the water truck spray. Humans handle these on common sense machines used to run on written rules, and now vision language models reason through them. A saying making the rounds. The next competition shifts from parameters to data assets. Whoever's lead logs more real-world miles with fuller scene coverage has the stronger model, which favors whoever already has scale and feeds a rich-get-richer loop. For you, the meaning is direct. The driverless car you hail drives more like a veteran each quarter and handles weirder scenes. Paradigm shifts do not happen on a launch stage. They happen in the release notes of every update. Beside the Robotaxi noise, a quieter front has opened trend in logistics. A 2026 report from EO Intelligence offered a judgment. 2026 is the year global robovans, L4 driverless logistics vehicles, leap from experimental validation to digital transport infrastructure. A logistics vehicle carries goods, so its commercialization bar sits a notch lower. No passenger trust needed routes locked onto highways and campuses, hours chosen to dodge messy traffic. For freight, the economics are blunter. A long-haul driver's labor runs 30 to 40% of operating costs, and L4 removes the wage along with the fatigue driving compliance constraints. China's Neolix and White Rhino, America's Aurora and Kodiak all race here. And at the World Robot Conference, CRRC's unmanned retail vehicle even folded the shop and the delivery run into one machine. The spillover's strategic meaning is cost sharing. One stack of sensing, decision-making, and cloud dispatch amortized across passenger and cargo scenes, widening the moat for every player. Cargo has its own death valley. Highway L4 looks simple, but the long tail lives in weather and failure handling, blowouts, shifted loads, extreme rain and snow. Leading driverless freight companies still earn mainly from pilot contracts on trunk routes, a long way from profit at scale. Freight moves first for a plain reason. Cargo does not get scared. A passenger cares how the ride feels and how an accident would untangle. A box of freight is numb to speed and indifferent to detours. Half the passenger barrier is psychological, and ledgers are easier to negotiate with than psychology. Late night suits hauling goods perfectly. Cities by day, trunk lines by night. One stack eating 2 time slots. Reading this line calibrates judgment about passenger service too. Logistics customers are companies, and companies decide from a cost sheet. Savings drop straight into profit. And no story gets a signature if the numbers fail. Contracts and cash flows on the cargo side run an order of magnitude more honest than launch events on the passenger side. The day logistics revenue climbs, passenger costs are most likely being dragged down by the same stack because the R&D being amortized is the same R&D. The chapter in one line. To judge how mature this industry really is, skip the passenger launch events and open the cargo earnings report. The events tell stories. The reports show cash flow. Cast forward 4 or 5 years, 3 scenarios, each with its own tripwire. Scenario 1. The oligopoly accelerates. Cybercab volume delivers and cost really lands under $30, letting Tesla overwhelm on fleet scale. Waymo holds the premium market behind its safety report and the Zeekr RT. Apollo Go cap domestic scale and opens the Middle East and Southeast Asia by exporting the whole solution. Three-way standoff, regional monopolies, and around 2028, the first company to turn single city operating profit positive tripwires. No major crash freezes regulators, and someone pushes remote assistance past one person for 20 cars. Scenario 2, the fragmented marathon. Volume costs fall slower than promised. Regulatory pullbacks arrive in cycles after each accident. And the industry grinds through per-city access swamps. In 2030, global unsupervised penetration is still a single-digit percentage, and the Robotaxi settles in as a supplement to ride-hailing. The prices then migrate toward compute and operations services, with NVIDIA and the platform companies like Uber quietly collecting the cycle tax. Scenario 3. The black swan hard break. One vicious crash or geopolitics hard splits the Chinese market from the overseas ones. Technology route. 4. Global standards fragment and the industry gets set back 2 or 3 years. Low probability, but the cruise precedent proves the tail risk is real. My own reading, the most likely outcome blends 1 and 2. Slow acceleration under regional fragmentation. China scales first on infrastructure and access. Efficiency. The US chases on cost, innovation, and the two meet in third markets. The anchor is a plain piece of economics. In any industry where unit cost is falling steeply, penetration never moves in a straight line. It waits for a cost inflection and then breaks suddenly for robot access. That inflection most plausibly lands in 2027 or 2028, when the ramp of a native car like the Cybercab or the RT finishes. Scenario work is for writing the tripwires down in a advance, only incidentally for guessing, right? Watch 3 readings, whether volume cost genuinely falls, how fiercely regulators respond after each crash, and how many cars one remote assistant covers all 3 moving well as way to scenario 1. Anyone thinking pushes toward scenario 2. Memorize the dashboard, and if all 3 readings roll toward the bad end at once, fold the heartbreak back into your thinking. One line of fine print: local monopoly is not automatically good for riders. A city down to 1 or 2 operators loses its price reference, and where the saved labor cost flows is decided by how hard somebody else in town is watching. What has always protected the low fares is 2 companies in 1 city glaring at each other. Whichever city's driverless fleet refuses to cut prices gets an early taste of scenario one's other face. One last layer: the capital market, the one most technology analysis forgets to book. Waymo's $126 billion valuation for comparison. General Motors' market value at this point is less than half of it, and Ford's is lower still. That price buys the slope of the per kilometer cost decline multiplied by the entire global mobility market. With today's ride revenue almost beside the point, the bull case: transportation is a $1 trillion market, and if driverlessness redistributes even 30% of the profit pool, the first mover really can be worth more than any single automaker. The bear case: ride-hailing told this story once already, and Uber's market performance since its IPO fell far short of what the era imagined. Inside Tesla's market value, Robotaxi carries the heaviest narrative weight. Analysts generally split the valuation into auto, energy, and autonomy, and the run-up ahead of the Cybercab event is at bottom the market repricing that option. That is why the event matters, a rare hard information node for calibrating it. China prices this differently. Apollo Go does not list separately, so it folds into Baidu's market value, and the street estimate of the autonomy unit has carried huge disagreement for years. Both argue it would be worth tens of billions of dollars spun out. Alone, bears argue demonstration phase losses will drag on the parent indefinitely. The post-IPO swings of Pony.ai and WeRide show the same option-style volatility. A cold observation to close the layer: across every technological revolution, markets have rarely priced it right on the first pass. Railroads, telegraph, the internet. Each round went bubble, collapse, repair, and Robotaxi will most likely not be exempt. For an ordinary investor, this chapter offers neither a buy call nor a sell call, only a request. When the autonomous driving circus comes to town, tell which part of the price is cash flow and which part is story. Option-style pricing is extremely sensitive to information nodes. The moment an earnings report or launch lands, price recalibrates in an instant, because nobody knows what the asset is truly worth, and the number gets argued out node by node. A plunge is not necessarily technological retreat. A surge, not necessarily deliverables. Verdicts wait for the nodes to stack up. Those historical bubbles have a forgotten second half. The collapse ruins the investors, but the infrastructure stays. The railroads went bankrupt, and the rails remain. If autonomy follows the same road, the burned cash converts into cars on the road and trained organizational capability, and neither vanishes with the share price. The next recovery grows out of those leftovers. So whether the bubble bursts and whether the technology works are 2 separate questions. Answer them separately. 3 questions to land this on people. Will hailing a ride get cheaper? Short term, no. Medium term, it depends on the city. New cities inside the subsidy window will be cheap. Wuhan's 5 yuan for 5 kilometers is the sample, but subsidy is customer acquisition cost, never the resting price. Once regional oligopolies form, prices will most likely track ride-hailing, and the saved labor cost split 2 ways: part into profit, part into a denser fleet with shorter wait. What crashes prices is maxed out utilization, which needs fleet scale and demand density together. And in most cities that lands after 2028. Do drivers lose their job? Full-time ride-hail drivers feel the squeeze first, but slower than the alarmist forecast test. But because fleet expansion is gated by access permits and production capacity, taking one city from 100 cars to 10,000 takes at least 2 or 3 years. Taxis and designated driver services sit further out, and driver training and auto repair will move slower than driving itself. The signal worth watching is the date your city grants fully driverless commercial permit from that date. The countdown runs. If you are buying a car now, should you wait for the Robotaxi era? If what you want is an asset and the freedom to leave whenever you like, do not wait. Driverlessness reduces the economics of hailing a ride and leaves the economics of owning one pretty much alone. If your city already has Apollo, Go, or similar, take one ride and let your own body file the experience. No amount of pretty industry data can answer for you. For most people, the next 5 years is a mixed menu of driverless cars, ride-hailing private cars, and public transit. The jobs question deserves one more layer. Because the work moves, it does not evaporate. Jobs behind the wheel shrink while jobs around the fleet grow. Remote assistance, cleaning, and charging already sprouting in operating cities. A driver's command of the roads and feel for the city are transferable capital. The hard case is the person who neither drives nor lands inside the new network, and how a society catches them is a harder question than any technology here. The answer gets settled at the policy table. The other side of the ledger, driverless cars widen transportation store. People who cannot drive, the elderly riders with limited mobility, get their first chance to leave the house without troubling anybody. That demand appears in nobody's order statistics because it has never once been served. So it only surfaces once fleets spread. These beneficiaries never get the microphone. They benefit in silence, and that silence is one of the sturdiest foundations this business stands on. 3 lines to walk away with. Line 1. The September 3 Cybercab event tests one specific thing: whether Tesla's ability to drive cost per kilometer into the ground actually delivers $30, 48 kilowatt hours, purpose-built design. Hold all 3 at once, and the unit economics of Robotaxis get rewritten. Line 2. At this 3-way table, Waymo holds the safety record and the data transparency. Apollo Go holds cost and access efficiency. Tesla holds manufacturing and room to imagine. Nobody holds all the good cards. The variable that decides the next 2 years has less to do with who leads on technology and everything to do with who crosses the scaling death valley first. Line 3. Every argument about Robotaxis collapses into one plain question: would you put your child alone into a car with no steering wheel? The technology answers with mileage statistics. People answer one real ride at a time. The distance between those two answers is the entire residual risk of this business. After the September 3 event, I will put out a follow-up episode, laying its promises side by side with this episode's projections. See you there and in the comments. Tell me, have you taken a driverless ride? What did the first one feel like? Would you let your child ride alone?